So the predicament of the more than 50 refugees in Australia who have been assessed by ASIO to be a security risk is that they remain in indefinite detention, locked up indefinitely on the basis of this largely secret process and secret assessment. Essentially, as part of that, the government has set up an independent review process which is being conducted at the moment. Now that process is not the ideal model. The real problem here, of course, is that at the moment there is no guarantee that even if the independent reviewer found that the security assessment was not appropriate, that ASIO would in fact reverse that decision. But I should say too that at least it's a step forward in the sense that now we have a process where for the first time there is independent scrutiny of the reasons which led to this assessment by ASIO that the person, the refugee in question, is a security risk. So that's a very important development, but of course it has certain critical deficiencies. Now, we represent 30 of the refugees in this predicament who are currently having their assessments independently reviewed by Margaret Stone, the reviewer. And while it's not the ideal model, this review process, we're certainly putting everything we've got into it, throwing everything that we've got at it to give it the best shot that we can for our clients. One of our 30 clients, so one of the 55 refugees, took his matter all the way to the High Court last year in the case of M47 and won his case. And as a result, the government was ordered to process his case again, his case for a protection visa according to law. And yet, 6 months later, processing of his case appeared to have ground to a halt, and he was left with no alternative but to recently go back to the court and essentially seek that the government process his refugee case and that his detention, his continued detention, is unlawful in those circumstances. And that's a very important development because essentially the processing of his refugee case is a critical step in progressing the matter toward the grant of a protection visa and freedom from detention for our client. In another development, there is another High Court case to be heard before the full bench of the High Court next month in June, which is a further challenge to the process by which ASIO issued an adverse assessment to one of these people, one of these refugees. So part of the case is challenging the assessment process on the basis that, as it's alleged, that ASIO did not give the person in question procedural fairness in coming to its assessment that he was an adverse security risk. But also it's a challenge to his detention, his indefinite detention. So it also argues that his ongoing detention is unlawful. One of the critical issues here is whether the government will, in the future, consider alternatives to detention for these people. But other comparable countries have not as a norm, have not in general, seen fit to detain people, even if they are considered to be a security risk, indefinitely. In fact, the general approach has been not to detain people even if they are considered to be a security risk, but rather to look at better ways of managing that risk, that perceived risk or that actual risk, and that has involved alternatives to detention, of managing the situation by releasing people into the community on specific conditions. But at its heart, it's critical to understand here that the key predicament at the moment of all of these people is that they remain indefinitely incarcerated on the basis of a largely secret process where they still haven't been given the information and evidence upon which the adverse assessment by ASIO is made. All that people have now been given is a set of broad sanitised reasons, unclassified reasons, which have been provided by ASIO as the basis for the adverse assessment. But what remains for all of these people is that at the moment they remain indefinitely detained, and it has taken a huge toll on them. Every day is another day of damage to them in detention. It's caused profound distress, anguish and hopelessness, and has wrought enormous physical and mental harm on the people involved.